Have you ever looked at people who leave a glamorous career, walk away from a relationship, or step back from worldly success to devote themselves to spiritual practice, and secretly thought, are they just running away from real life? Have you ever felt a tug in your own heart to step back from a situation that is draining your soul, but stopped yourself because you were afraid others would think you were cold, selfish, or ungrateful? Welcome back to the channel. My friend, I am really glad you are here, because today we are going to unpack a huge misunderstanding that quietly hurts many sincere people on the path. In the original text we are expanding from, there is a powerful teaching. True renunciation is not escape. It is not indifference. It is not abandonment. Real renunciation is an expression of deep compassion. Leaving is not necessarily I do not care. Sometimes, leaving is I care so much that I refuse to keep feeding the patterns that are hurting both of us. When we hear the word renunciation, many of us picture a cold scene, a person turning their back on family, on society, on joy, walking away to some distant mountain or monastery, leaving the people who love them confused and hurt. We imagine renunciation as shutting down, becoming numb, refusing to feel. But the renunciation that great masters talk about is very different. It is not about hating the world. It is about seeing clearly how our usual ways of loving and living are tangled with fear, craving, control, and ignorance. It is about letting go of those tangles so that a more spacious, fearless, and generous love can appear. In this long video minus style sharing, we are going to walk through this slowly. We will look at the difference between escape and renunciation, through stories that might sound uncomfortably familiar. We will explore why staying in certain situations can actually be more selfish than leaving them, and why leaving from the right place in your heart can be an act of protection for everyone involved. We will talk about how true renunciation is not just for monks and nuns. It has a place in the middle of careers, families, and messy relationships. And again, we will circle back to these core questions. What am I really attached to here? Is my staying actually helping? Or just satisfying my fear and vanity? If I step back from my craving and control, how would love express itself? Let us start with a very common story. There is a woman we will call Emily. From the outside, Emily looks like the perfect daughter. She calls her parents every day, visits every weekend, sends money, and rushes over whenever they need anything, no matter how small. Her relatives often praise her. She is so filial. She really puts her parents first. Inside, the picture is more complicated. Emily's mother is extremely controlling and emotionally unstable. Since Emily was a child, her mother has used guilt, tears, and criticism to keep her close. If Emily wants to go on a trip, her mother sighs, "So you are abandoning us now." If Emily is busy with work and cannot answer the phone immediately, her mother says, "You do not care if I live or die." When Emily brings up her own needs, ideas, or dreams, her mother responds with dramatic stories about sacrifice. "I gave up my whole life for you. How can you be so selfish?" As a result, Emily has grown into an adult who is constantly tense. Whenever her phone lights up with her mother's name, her stomach clenches. She tries to be patient, but inside she is full of resentment. She feels trapped. After discovering spiritual teachings about compassion and filial piety, she doubles down on her self-sacrifice. She tells herself, "If I were truly kind, I would endure. I would give up my own desires. I would stay close, no matter how suffocated I feel." She pays her parents' bills, drives them everywhere, listens for hours to their complaints. On social media, she posts photos of family gatherings with hashtags about love and gratitude. At night, alone in her room, she quietly cries. She starts to have fantasies of running away to a distant city, cutting off contact, disappearing. Then she judges herself harshly. "How could I even think that? I must be a terrible person. What is happening here? On the surface, she is staying. She is fulfilling all the visible duties. But in her heart, there is a storm of resentment, guilt, and exhaustion. Her kindness is soaked with bitterness. Her sacrifices are mixed with the hope that others will see her as good, as devoted. This is not renunciation. This is attachment in the costume of duty. What is she attached to? She is attached to an image of herself as the perfect daughter. She is attached to her parents' approval and to the fear of being judged by relatives and society. She is attached to avoiding the pain of confrontation. She thinks that if she just keeps giving, the knot will somehow untie itself. But it only pulls tighter. Now imagine that, after years of this, something inside Emily cracks. She reads a teaching one day that says, real compassion does not mean endlessly feeding the neuroses of others. Real compassion sometimes means saying no, stepping back, and allowing people to face their own mind. She cries when she reads this. It feels like someone finally said the words she was not allowed to think. Still, she is terrified of acting on it. She goes to see a teacher she trusts and pours out everything. The teacher listens and then asks, very gently, if you continue like this for 10 more years, what kind of person will you become? Emily imagines herself at 40-5, still rushing through traffic every weekend, still swallowing her words, still sleeping poorly, her face dyed, her eyes tired. She imagines how much resentment will have built up by then, how cold and mechanical her care might feel. She shudders. The teacher asks another question. If you truly wished your parents well, would you want them to depend forever on emotional blackmail and control? Or would you want them to grow even a little in their own emotional maturity? She thinks of her mother's patterns, the same complaints, the same manipulation, the same fears repeating year after year. She realizes that by endlessly accommodating them, she has helped keep those patterns alive. Her staying, which she thought was noble, might also be reinforcing their illusion that they cannot live without her. The teacher says quietly, sometimes, stepping back is not abandonment. It is creating space for everyone to see more clearly. It is a kind of renunciation, not of your parents themselves, but of the unhealthy way you relate to them. If you can let go of your attachment to being the perfect daughter, you might discover a more honest, more spacious love. This is the turning point. Imagine that over the next months, Emily begins to experiment with small acts of renunciation. She stops picking up every single call immediately. She lets some ring through and calls back later when she has the energy to listen. When her mother uses guilt, she does not immediately apologize and brush over. Instead, she says, I love you, but I cannot come right now. I will visit on Sunday, as we agreed. When relatives make comments like, oh, you are leaving your poor parents alone, she does not launch into justifications. She simply says, I am taking care of my health too. I want to be able to accompany them for a long time, not burn out quickly. Inside, every one of these small steps feels like breaking a habit. Her ear screams. Her guilt rises. But underneath, something else appears. A small sense of dignity and space. She discovers that, when she is not constantly exhausted and resentful, she can actually listen to her parents with more genuine warmth during the time she does visit. She can smile without forcing it. She can say I love you without secretly thinking, I hate this. What changed? She did not cut her parents out. She did not stop caring. What she renounced was the illusion that she must sacrifice her sanity to be a good daughter. She stepped back from her own attachment to an image and from the unhealthy pattern of always rescuing. That is true renunciation. Letting go of the ways we are entangled in suffering, so that a more honest and compassionate relationship can emerge. It is the same in romantic relationships. There is a man named Jason. Jason has been in a relationship for 6 years. The first year was beautiful shared interests, late night talks, mutual support. Over time, The relationship has turned stormy. There are frequent arguments, cycles of breaking up and reconciling, promises to change that never fully land. Both he and his partner are deeply attached. They tell each other things like, "Without you, I am nothing. If you leave me, I will not survive." They thought this was romantic. In reality, the relationship is full of jealousy and fear. They check each other's phone, interrogate each other about small delays, monitor each other's social media. They talk about love, but most of the time, what they feel is anxiety. Jason discovers spiritual teachings about compassion, loving minus kindness, and non-minus attachment. He decides, I will be more patient. I will practice. I will stay and transform this relationship with spirituality. He stops yelling as much. He tries to listen more. He suggests meditating together, but nothing much changes. His partner is not interested in self-minus reflection. They keep playing the same game. Fights, tears, intense reconciliation, dramatic declarations. Jason begins to suspect that staying in this relationship is feeding both their neuroses more than their growth. But then he thinks, if I leave, am I not being unspirited? Am I not abandoning someone who needs help? Shouldn't I stay and sacrifice myself for love? Again, the confusion between renunciation and escape arises. If he leaves out of hatred, or to punish his partner, or as a way to avoid facing his own patterns, that is escape. It will simply repeat in a new form somewhere else. But if he leaves because he sees clearly that his staying is helping neither of them grow, because he recognizes that he does not have the capacity to transform this dynamic alone, and because he wishes his partner genuine, healing even as he steps away, that is renunciation. He is renouncing the fantasy that he can save the other person by enduring endless cycles of pain. He is renouncing his own addiction to drama. He is choosing to step out of a pattern that is planting heavy karmic seeds. Renunciation here is not I do not care about you. It is I care about both of us too much to keep feeding something that is slowly burning us. In a wider sense, real renunciation is always about letting go of what is ultimately harming yourself and others. Even if on the surface it looks devoted or glamorous. Let us shift the lens now to people who make outer renunciation, the ones who leave home, jobs, and possessions to become monks, nuns, or full minus-time practitioners. Many people misunderstand them. They think, you must really not love your family to walk away like that. You must be avoiding responsibility. You must be cold. Sometimes, that is true. There are cases where people use spiritual life as a way to avoid facing their unresolved traumas, their responsibilities, their fears of intimacy. They disappear into robes and rituals without really purifying their hearts. That is escape. But there are also people whose renunciation is rooted in very deep love. Imagine someone who has seen, over and over, how their personal patterns, anger, addiction, depression, confusion hurt the people around them. Imagine someone who has watched generations of their family repeat similar painful patterns. At some point, they make a vow. I want to dedicate this life to breaking these patterns at the deepest level I can. I want to train my mind so thoroughly that I can genuinely help others, not just temporarily soothe them. They realize that, given their temperament, the best way for them to do this is to step away from certain worldly entanglements for a while. Not because they despise their family, but because they know that if they stay in the middle of their old triggers while trying to train their mind, they will keep slipping back. So they leave, with tears, with prayers, with gratitude. Years later, they may come back to visit. Their face is softer, their presence calmer, their heart more spacious. They are more able to listen without reacting, to support without controlling, to love without grasping. From the outside, it looked like they abandoned their family years ago. From the inside, their leaving was an act of great love. They sacrificed ordinary closeness in order to cultivate a capacity to be truly beneficial on a deeper level. Of course, not everyone is called to this kind of outer renunciation. Most people's path is to practice in the middle of family and work. But understanding this helps us see that judging others' renunciation from the outside is dangerous. We do not know their heart. Instead of asking, "Why did they leave?" as an accusation, we might ask, "What were they letting go of? And for the sake of what?" And instead of asking ourselves, "Am I a bad person if I step back from something?" we might ask, "If I stay, what seeds am I watering? If I leave, what seeds might I finally be able to plant?" There is another angle here that is often ignored. Renunciation of inner habits. You can live in the same house with the same people, keep the same job, and still be living a life of deep renunciation. How? By renouncing certain ways of relating that have defined you for years. Maybe you have always been the one who must be right, who cannot stand to lose an argument. Renunciation, for you, might mean letting go of the need to win. You remain in the same conversations, but you no longer treat them like battles. You renounce one of your favorite toys, the satisfaction of intellectual victory. Maybe you have always used sarcasm and harsh humor to protect yourself. Renunciation might mean consciously dropping this habit. Even though it feels uncomfortable at first, you renounce the short-term pleasure of cutting others down for the sake of long-term kindness. Maybe you have always centered yourself in every story, making everything about your pain, your needs, your role. Renunciation could be letting go of this constant self-referencing, choosing to ask others about their experience without immediately switching the focus back to you. In each case, no one outside may even know you are renouncing anything. There are no robes, no ceremonies, no big announcements. But, in your heart, you are letting go of identities, of attachments to being seen in certain ways. This is sometimes the most difficult renunciation of all. Outer renunciation can lead to admiration or criticism, but at least it is visible. Inner renunciation gives you almost no social reward. People might not thank you for dropping your pride. They might not notice that you are choosing patience over rage. But karmic ally. This is powerful. Every time you renounce a habitual reaction and choose a wiser response, you are reprogramming your destiny. You are not just behaving differently. You are becoming a slightly different kind of being. You can think of it like cleaning a mirror that has been covered in dust for many years. When you wipe off a layer of anger, a layer of greed, a layer of jealousy, the mirror starts to reflect reality more clearly. Renunciation, in this sense, is not about rejecting life. It is about rejecting the illusions that keep you from meeting life fully. So why do people confuse renunciation with escape? Because from the outside, they can look similar. A person leaves a job. A person ends a relationship. A person moves to a monastery. A person sets a firm boundary with family. Without knowing their mind, we can easily project our own fears and judgments onto them. So let us make a clear distinction. Escape is driven by aversion and fear. It says, "I cannot stand this. I do not want to look at my own pattern. I want to run away and hope that changing my environment will magically fix everything, without me changing." Renunciation is driven by clarity and compassion. It says, "I see that in this situation, my current mind is not able to act in a way that reduces suffering. Staying as I am will keep feeding the same pain. For the sake of everyone involved, I need to step back, let go of certain attachments, and grow." Escape refuses responsibility. Renunciation deepens responsibility, but in a wiser, less ego-centric way. Escape usually blames others. They ruined my life, so I am leaving. Renunciation looks honestly at oneself. My own attachment and ignorance are part of this pattern. I need to work on them, even if it means changing the outer situation. Escape is often a reaction to pain in the moment. Renunciation is usually the result of long reflection, practice, and a growing sense of what truly matters. And here is the most important difference. Escape makes your world smaller. It reduces your capacity to love and face life. Renunciation, when genuine, makes your world bigger. It frees energy and attention that were tied up in clinging, so you can care more widely. Let us bring destiny and cause and effect into this. Every time you cling to a situation that your deeper wisdom knows is unhealthy, you are reinforcing certain karmic patterns. Fear of change, addiction to control, attachment to image, lack of trust in life. Sometimes, staying is actually planting seeds of resentment and bitterness. Those seeds will ripen later as more broken relationships, more self-hatred, more repeated patterns. On the other hand, when you renounce with a clear heart something that is no longer aligned with your deepest values, you plant very different seeds. Courage, honesty, respect for truth, compassion for yourself and others. Over time, these seeds can change the course of your life. It is not always visible immediately. In the short term, renunciation can look like loss. You might lose status, money, comfort, approval. You might be misunderstood. You might feel lonely. But in the long term, if your renunciation is rooted in truth and love, you are creating conditions for a more authentic, freer, and more loving life. You may find that new opportunities arise, not only in outer forms, but in inner capacities. More patience, more emotional resilience, more ability to be present. There is a classic image that helps. Imagine you are holding a sharp object very tightly in your hand. It is cutting into your palm, making you bleed. But you refuse to let go, because you believe that what you are holding is precious. You tell yourself stories about how important it is. Renunciation is simply the moment you realize, this is a knife, not a jewel, and you open your fingers. At first, your hand hurts. It might even hurt more, because now blood can flow and the wound is exposed to air. But healing can finally begin. Escape might be dropping the knife and then immediately picking up another one with a different shape. Renunciation is dropping the knife and learning to live with an open hand. Now, let us talk about what this can look like in very practical, everyday terms. Perhaps you are in a job that pays well but requires you to constantly lie, manipulate, or harm others. Escape would be quitting impulsively, with no reflection, only to jump into another job with the same ethical problems because you never examine your values. Renunciation would be carefully planning a change, knowing you may need to adjust your lifestyle, but choosing consciously to align your work with your conscience, even if it means less money. Perhaps you are stuck in a friendship that revolves around gossip, complaint, and mutual enabling of bad habits. Escape would be ghosting the other person without explanation, carrying resentment and judgment with you. Renunciation might be gradually stepping back from certain conversations, setting boundaries around what you are willing to discuss, and possibly having an honest talk. I care about you, but I cannot keep feeding these patterns. I want our connection to be healthier. Perhaps you are addicted to a certain comfort food, screens, shopping, attention that you know is numbing you. Escape would be swinging to the opposite extreme, trying to cut it off harshly without understanding the loneliness or pain underneath, then relapsing on hating yourself more. Renunciation would be gently, steadily reducing your dependence on it, while at the same time turning toward deeper sources of nourishment, practice, service, honest relationships, meaningful work. In every case, the outer action might look similar, leaving, stepping back. The inner attitude is what makes it renunciation or escape. So, how do you know if a decision you are considering is real renunciation, not just running away? There is no simple formula, but there are some honest questions you can sit with. Am I making this choice mainly to avoid discomfort, or to align more closely with truth and compassion? Have I looked at my own patterns in this situation? Or am I only blaming others? If I imagine myself 10 years from now, looking back at this moment, Which choice would I respect more? Is my heart more closed or more open when I picture following through on this decision? Real renunciation, even when it involves walking away, usually leaves your heart softer, not harder. You may feel grief, but you also feel a quiet sense of rightness, of relief from pretense. Escape often leaves a bitter aftertaste, a sense of unfinished business, lingering hatred, a continued obsession with the situation you claim to leave. And what about those who are affected by your renunciation? Family, partners, colleagues, communities? Is it not selfish to hurt them by stepping back? Here we must be very honest. Sometimes your renunciation will hurt people in the short term. There is no way around that. If a partner is used to you always sacrificing yourself, they will suffer when you stop. If parents are used to controlling you with guilt, they will be upset when you pull back. If a workplace is used to your silence in the face of injustice, they will be angry when you speak or leave. The question is, are you hurting them by finally stopping a pattern that is harming everyone? Or are you hurting them by abandoning healthy responsibilities out of laziness or fear? If you are walking away from your child because you do not want the inconvenience of parenting, that is not renunciation. That is abandoning responsibility. If you are leaving your aging parents with no support, while you chase pleasure and call it freedom, that is not renunciation. That is selfishness. If you are fleeing from a community because they mirror your flaws too clearly, without any reflection or communication, that is not renunciation. That is avoidance. But if you are stepping back from dynamics that are clearly unhealthy, and you are doing so with as much honesty, communication, and goodwill as you can, then even if there is pain, there is also truth. Over time, people may come to see that your renunciation freed not only you, but them. There is a story of a practitioner who left a family business that was built on exploitation. For years, his relatives accused him of betrayal. They said, "You abandoned us. You are ungrateful. You are brainwashed by spirituality." He suffered from their judgment, but he knew that staying would have meant participating in harm he could no longer justify. He chose renunciation. Years later, when legal trouble and market changes exposed the business's practices, some of those same relatives came to him and said, "You were right to leave. You were the only one strong enough to walk away." His renunciation had both protected his own karma and served as a quiet example that later helped others question their path. Destiny is shaped in these quiet, difficult choices. Every time you choose truth over comfort, you are bending your life in a new direction. Every time you let go of an illusion, even one that gave you identity and status, you are stepping closer to a kind of freedom that no one can take away. This is why, in deeper teachings, renunciation is always tied to great compassion. When you renounce your attachment to being seen as good, you can finally do what is actually helpful, not just what looks good. When you renounce the fantasy that you can fix everyone, you can love them as they are, without constant manipulation. When you renounce your addiction to praise and fear of blame, you become more available to serve in whatever way is needed, without constantly calculating your image. When you renounce certain pleasures that dull your clarity, you become more sensitive to the suffering of others and more able to respond. So renunciation is not a cold no to the world. It is a clear no to the forces inside you that keep you from loving the world well. As we move toward the close of this long sharing, I want to turn to you very directly. Is there an area in your life right now where you suspect you are staying for the wrong reasons? Maybe you are staying in a job, telling yourself it is for your family, when actually deep down you know you are staying because you are afraid of losing status. Maybe you are staying in a relationship, telling yourself it is love, when actually most of what you feel is fear of being alone. Maybe you are staying in a role in your spiritual community, telling yourself it is devotion, when actually it is because you like being seen as important. Maybe you are staying in certain habits, telling yourself they are harmless comforts, when actually they are slowly numbing your heart. What would renunciation look like here, not as an impulsive escape, but as a conscious, compassionate letting go? You do not have to answer immediately. Just allow the question to sit in your mind and heart. True renunciation usually begins as a small whisper. This way of living is not aligned with who I am becoming. I cannot keep doing this without betraying something sacred inside. If you listen to that whisper, if you allow it to grow, if you bring it into your practice, into your prayers or meditations, into your honest conversations, you may find that clarity arise. You may not need to make dramatic outer changes. Sometimes the renunciation is entirely inside, dropping expectation, stopping subtle control, releasing grudges. Other times, outer changes will be necessary. You may have to walk away from certain people or roles. That will take courage. If you decide to do that, remember two things. First, you are allowed to care and grieve even as you let go. Renunciation does not require you to become emotionally numb. You can cry as you bow out. You can feel sadness and still know you are doing the right thing. Second, if your renunciation is real, it will, over time, increase your capacity to love, not decrease it. You will not become less human. You will become more deeply human, less entangled, more able to offer stable, warm presence to others. I would truly love to hear from you. Have you ever left something, a job, a relationship, a habit, and later realized that your leaving was not escape but an act of deeper care for yourself and others? Have you ever stayed too long in a situation out of fear or attachment and felt how that staying slowly poisoned your heart? If you feel safe to share, your story in the comments might be exactly what someone else needs to read. Someone who is currently torn between staying and leaving, between clinging and letting go, might see themselves in your experience and find courage. If this long reflection resonated with you, if it helped you see renunciation in a kinder, clearer light, I invite you to support this channel in simple ways. You can subscribe so you stay connected as we continue exploring awakening, wisdom, cause and effect, practice, and destiny in the middle of everyday life. You can like this video so that more people who are silently struggling with these choices can find it. And if you feel called to walk more closely with this community, you can consider joining as a member to sustain the time and heart that go into these sharings. Most of all, whether or not you ever click another button, I hope you carry this sentence with you. True renunciation is not turning your back on love. It is turning your back on the illusions that shrink love into fear and control. Sometimes, leaving is not I do not care, but I care too deeply to keep playing this game. When you let go in that spirit step by step, breath by breath, you are not abandoning the world. You are becoming someone who can finally love it with a freer, braver, and more compassionate heart.
Life gets noisy. Work, stress, expectations. Sometimes we lose touch with the quiet part of ourselves. Bracelet isn't just an accessory. It's a small reminder that you deserve peace. You deserve moments of stillness. You deserve to hold on to your inner balance. If one of these bracelets speaks to your heart, you'll find the purchase link in the description below. And even more auctions available on our channel's shop page. Ik own the one that feels right.